Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article says use of CT scans and steroids for COVID 19. When it comes to the second wave of COVID 19, what we are witnessing is increasing number of people who are witnessing shortness of the breath. What we are also witnessing is drop in the oxygen saturation level, which is why most of the people who suffer from shortness of the breath are being hospitalized. The minute they are hospitalized, the doctors are administering steroids and are also asking the patients to go through CT scans and tests. In this particular backdrop, we have the AIMS director who has warned against the use of such steroids and CT scans when there are patients who are suffering from mild symptoms. So the article here primarily focuses on the critical evaluation of what is the use of the CT scan and also looks into the usage of the steroids. First up, let's look into the use or when CT scan is advised for a COVID-19 patient. For the COVID-19 patients, one of the fundamental tests that is conducted is the RT-PCR test. If it shows to be positive, then that patient is declared as COVID-19 positive, and if this particular test gives negative, in such a case, in most of the cases, that patient will be declared as negative. But of late, in the second wave of COVID-19, what we are also witnessing is the RT-PCR test may give negative to that particular patient, but the patient may also suffer from all the symptoms of COVID-19. Yes, the RT-PCR test is showing negative, but in spite of it, that particular patient may be suffering from other symptoms like the sore throat, or he may have body pains as well, or he may not be able to taste as well. So in such a scenario where the RT-PCR test is negative but there are other symptoms of the COVID-19, in such a scenario doctors are usually asking for the CT test results. The next condition where the CT tests are prescribed for the COVID-19 patients is to prevent some of the complications. Let's say there is a patient who is suffering from severe COVID-19 issues. In such a patient, it can result in complications like thromboembolism or pneumomediastinum. What do we mean by it? Let's say when there are clots in the blood in the veins, that is what is called as the thromboembolism. Only when we have the CT scan, we would be able to understand whether there are blood clots in the vein. And apart from this, let's say there is one of the rare condition which occurs when there are air leaks that happens in the mediastinum region. This happens to be one of the regions in the lung region, and if air enters this particular region, only the CT scan would be able to identify it. So the second condition when a patient is advised to go for the CT scan is when they realize or they assume that there can be complications like thromboembolism or pneumomediastinum. The third condition when the person is advised to go for the CT scan is that a person is admitted in the ICU. All the medications are being provided to that particular person. There is periodic intervention as well, but in spite of all the interventions given by the doctors to that particular patient, he is not showing any signs of improvement. In fact, the chest x-rays also show new lesions as well. In this particular case, there might be a damage in the tissue where one would not be able to identify, which is where we require the CT scan to identify in case there is any damage in the internal issue, or it may also result in some of the fungal super infections like aspergillosis or mucormycosis. In all these cases, it is only the CT scan which would be able to identify if there are any complications. In all these cases, CT scan are advised for the patient. So kindly note, these CT scans are advised by the doctors only in severe cases. So the article here says that only in those patients where it is completely strong, there is severe cases of COVID-19, only then CT scans is advised by the doctors. But in rest of the cases, in mild symptomatic cases, it should not be advised, says AIMS director. What are the major health complications? When we look into the health complications, one CT scan is equal to getting 300 to 400 chest x-rays. So when an individual get exposed to such huge radiations, unnecessary radiations, this could be harmful in the long run. Why? Because there have been examples where it may result in cancer as well. Since it may result in cancer, it is better to avoid such a scenario in the mild symptoms, says the AIMS director. Now let us focus on the steroids which are being administered to the COVID-19 patients. Corticosteroids like dexamethasone are being administered to the COVID-19 patients. What are these corticosteroids? These are nothing but some of the drugs that lower the inflammation in the body. How do they do it? They reduce the immune system activity, and at the same time, when you look into the COVID-19 patients, there are examples where it has also resulted in cytokine storm as well. What is the cytokine storms? This is where the body starts attacking its own cells, assuming that it is a pathogen. Generally, when there is a pathogen like a virus or a bacteria, the body starts becoming immune to that particular pathogen. It starts fighting that particular pathogen, but there might be reactions where the body will fight its own cells. That is what is called as cytokine storm. So according to analysis and experiments that have been conducted world over, it has been clinically proved also by United Kingdom's national clinical trial called as Recovery that it has helped in controlling the virus growth in the patient. So this corticosteroids like dexamethasone will basically prevent the inflammation in the body by calming down the immune system and also preventing the progression of organ damage. This is what happens when it comes to these steroids. But the major issue when it comes to administration of these steroids is that doctors will have to know when it has to be administered. Initially, this particular steroid should not be administered by the doctors because the body's natural immune system will fight against this pathogen. So they should know when it has to be administered, the timing of the administration, the dosage of the administration, and the duration. So this is very important when it comes to administering of the steroids. So it should not be administered initially, but only when there is an excessive replication of the virus. That is when this particular drug will have to be administered. These are some of the advantages as to why steroids are administered to the COVID-19 patients. But there are some issues and concerns with respect to the steroids as well. What are those? In many mild COVID-19 cases where steroids had stimulated viral replication, causing oxygen levels to drop, and at the same time there is potential harm that is associated with the long-term use of the steroids in a serious COVID-19 patient. How? This results in rise in the blood sugar levels, which will need to be carefully managed with insulin to prevent secondary bacterial or fungal infection. So what we have to ensure is that these steroids will have to be given by the doctors only when there is need, and these need not be given in the mild conditions where the patient is not suffering seriously. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says the Supreme Court ruling on identifying backward classes. We did discuss about this article in our day before yesterday's CNA, but what we will be understanding is in reference to the National Commission for the Backward Classes. The National Commission for the Backward Classes happens to be a constitutional body. This comes under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. But kindly note, this was a statutory body earlier, but only from 2018 there was a constitutional amendment that was made under the 102nd Constitutional Amendment. That is when what was once a statutory body became a constitutional body. Now, this National Commission for Backward Classes happens to be a constitutional body that will investigate the conditions and difficulties of socially and educationally backward classes. Since this was a constitutional amendment, the constitution was also inserted with two important articles. What are those articles? One, we have is Article 338B, which was inserted into the Constitution. What is this Article 338B? Basically, it deals with structure, duties and powers of this National Commission for the Backward Classes. What is the structure of this particular commission? When you look into the structure, it is headed by a chairperson. They also have a vice chairperson followed by 3-member committee. So the chairperson, vice chairperson and 3 members of this particular commission will be appointed by the president, and the conditions of service and tenure of all these members will be decided by the president as per the rules prescribed by the president. What will be the powers of this particular commission? When we look into the powers that has been given to this particular commission, there are n number of safeguards that the constitution provides for the socially and educationally backward classes. Apart from the constitution, we might also have laws that have been passed by the parliament as well. So all those safeguards that are present in the constitution and also in the law will be taken care, will be safeguarded by this National Commission for the Backward Classes. In case they are not safeguarded, in case there are any other complaints, that will ultimately come to the National Commission for the Backward Classes, where all these complaints will be introspected by this particular commission. They will see if there is any deprivation of the rights and ensure that all these safeguards are protected. So what we will have is these particular rights that are given to the socially and educationally backward classes will be monitored by this particular committee. That is what is Article 338B, which was inserted in the 102nd Constitutional Amendment. Then we have another article which was also inserted into the constitution, and that happens to be Article 342A. When you look into Article 342A, it says the president may, with respect to any state or union territory, or where it is a state, after consultation with the governor thereof, by public notification, specify the socially and educationally backward classes which shall, for the purpose of this constitution, be deemed to be socially and educationally backward classes in relation to that state or the union territory, as the case may be. Then the second section says Parliament may by law include or exclude from the central list of socially and educationally backward classes specified in the notification. What do we mean by it? According to the plain reading of this particular article, it is the president who will be able to decide which caste in a particular state will fall under the criteria of socially and backward classes. For the state, it is the president who will interact with the governor. The governor will give a specific caste, and that caste for that particular state will fall under the SEBC list. So what is happening here? It is the president who will be declaring with a notification, says this article. So after the president has issued the public notification, it is the parliament which by law would be able to include a particular caste or exclude a particular caste from the central list of socially and educationally backward classes. This is what is the plain reading of Article 342A. Now, when we look into the Supreme Court judgment, it had delivered 2 judgments recently. One was in reference to the Maratha reservation, where it declared that Maratha reservation as unconstitutional, and at the same time it also states that states do not have the power to identify socially and educationally backward classes. So the Supreme Court has clearly said this power has been given to the president, where he consults the governor, and it is the parliament which should be able to include or exclude a particular caste from the socially and educationally backward classes. So what we understand is the Supreme Court has taken a plain reading of 342A of the Indian Constitution. What do we mean by it? When it comes to jurisprudence or the knowledge of law in reference to the interpretation, there are 2 ways of interpreting a particular statute. One is what is called as the literal interpretation. This is also called as the grammatical interpretation. The other is what is called as the logical interpretation. So the Supreme Court in this particular case has taken a literal interpretation of Article 342A. What do we mean by literal interpretation? When we look at literal interpretation, the Supreme Supreme Court or the judiciary in India will look at the bare act of that particular section or that particular article. So they will identify and look into the plain reading of this particular text and interpret the meaning of this particular statute or a section as per the will of the legislation. That is what is called as literal or the grammatical interpretation. Then we have logical interpretation, or this is also called as construction as well. What exactly happens in logical interpretation? The Supreme Court or the judiciary in India may interpret a particular statute or a section much beyond the words as prescribed in that particular section. So what do? So they basically try to understand the circumstances, why that particular law was created, why the law was necessity during that particular period. So they go behind that particular law, understand the spirit behind that particular law as well. So when it comes to the literal interpretation, it is just about the plain reading of those words in the statute. When it comes to the logical or the construction, it gives a new meaning to that particular interpretation. So the interpretation is generally an understanding of the law where the court tries to ascertain the meaning of that legislative process. So in this particular case, in this judgment, the Supreme Court has given a literal interpretation of Article 342A, says this article. How did the Supreme Court decide? According to the Supreme Court, the text was clear that the president alone could notify the list. So we did discuss it is the president as per 342A who would be able to define that particular list as per the public notification after the consultation with the governor. So it has taken the plain meaning or the literal meaning of the jurisprudence. Next, the Supreme Court looks into the provisions governing the National Commission for the Scheduled Caste and the procedure to identify the scheduled caste. Since the wordings in both these are very similar, which is why it has taken the literal interpretation of 342A. Finally, the Supreme Court judgment also drew on deliberations before a Rajya Sabha Select Committee. What is this deliberation before the Rajya Sabha Select Committee? Whenever a particular law, a statute or an article is inserted in any of the constitution or in a particular law, what we have is due deliberations and discussions. As these discussions were happening, there were some members in the parliament who also asked the government to insert a particular clause which said that states would also be able to continue to have the powers to identify socially and educationally backward classes. This was the discussion that was happening where members said that states should also have the powers to identify which caste should come under this particular clause. But the central government did not pay heed to it and went ahead with this particular proposal without inserting that particular section. As a result, the Supreme Court said, we have taken and delivered this particular judgment primarily because of all these conditions. So the problem right now is that in the near future, states would not be able to identify the socially and educationally backward classes. They would not be able to identify castes which they feel are socially and educationally backward. And as a result, we are violating some of the federalistic principles, says this article. So going forward, what are the options that are available with the government? The government, that is the central government, can amend this particular article, that is 342A, and also ensure that a specific clause is inserted where the states would also be able to identify socially and educationally backward class. So what it has to do, it has to make an amendment to the constitution and ensure that there is a specific clause that is inserted, or the central government may execute the orders of the Supreme Court as well. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. But for the Maratha reservation and its unconstitutional status, you can look into our day before yesterday's CNA. Now let's look into the next article. This article says top court orders immediate decongestion of all prisons. In the present situation, what we are witnessing is surge of the COVID-19 cases. When it comes to the jails and in the prisons, what we also know is India has huge number of people in the prisons. If there is one positive case, it may result in surge of the COVID-19 cases when it comes to the prisons. In order to reduce this surge and in order to minimize the decongestion, the directions have been issued by the Supreme Court, which has to be followed by the prison authorities as well as by the executive. What are these directions given by the Supreme Court? The first direction it says is that no arrest should be made by the police in violation of the Arnesh Kumar judgment. What is this Arnesh Kumar judgment? It clearly gives the guidelines as to how arrests will have to be made by the police officers. What do we mean by it? When it comes to a particular crime, there are two types of crime. One is what is called as cognizable, the other is what is called as non-cognizable crime. What is this cognizable crime? This is where an individual has committed some of the heinous act, let's say a murder, or it can be a rape, or it can be any of the heinous crimes as well. In such a scenario, the police have every right to arrest that particular person. But let's say it is a non-cognizable offenses. These offenses are the one which require the magisterial powers as well. So when it comes to arrest, since arrest is a humiliation, it curtails the individual's liberty as well as freedom and puts a permanent scar on that particular person. In all those cases of non-cognizable offenses, the individual, if he is being arrested, the police will have to justify such an arrest is what is this Arnesh Kumar judgment. And at the same time, in case it is an individual who's committed a crime which is less than 7 years of imprisonment, in such a case they have to justify the arrest in this particular scenario of COVID-19 to prevent congestion and spiraling or increase of the COVID-19 cases is the first direction issued by the Supreme Court. The second direction issued by the Supreme Court says the inmates of the jail who are serving a term should be given a minimum 90 days of parole. What is this parole? Before we understand this, let's understand another word called as furlough. What is this furlough? Let's say there is a person who is serving a jail term. As a matter of right, this particular person would be able to leave the prisons for about 14 days in a particular year. But kindly note, these 14 days may vary from one state to another. That is because prison, being a subject of state administration, it varies from one state to another. So what is this furlough? Let's say I am a person who is in jail currently. In 1 year, I as a person would be able to come out as a matter of days, 14 days outside the jail. I need not have to give any reasons to the jail authorities. I request the jail authorities that I want to go on furlough. So I would be asked to go outside the jail for about 14 days, which is a matter of right, and no reasons should be given or need not be given by this particular person who is currently in jail. But when it comes to the parole, let's say there is an emergency with respect to that individual who is currently in jail. It can be the death of the prisoner's family member or illness of a family member. So the reason have to be given by this particular person who is currently in jail. So in the earlier scenario of furlough, reasons need not be necessarily given, but in the parole, reasons have to be given. When it comes to furlough, it is a matter of right, but when it comes to parole, it is not a matter of right, but it is a matter of discretion of the prison authorities. In spite of me or an individual giving the reason, it is the police authorities who decide whether that particular person should be going out of the prison or not. So these are the differences between furlough and parole. In the present situation, in order to decongest the jails, the Supreme Court has asked the jail authorities to grant parole for about 90 days. Then the third direction issued by the Supreme Court is in reference to the proper medical facilities. So they have requested the prison authorities to ensure daily hygiene and sanitation that has to be improvised in the jail prisons, and at the same time ensure that there is prevention of the transmission. And finally, it has also requested the appointment of the special committee or the high powered committee so that it can screen the prisoners and release them on the interim bail. So this is what are the directions issued by the Supreme Court in order to decongest the jails in India. Now let's look into the next article. This article says 10 killed in blast at limestone quarry in Andhra Pradesh. So this article here is basically speaking from economic geography, where we are trying to identify and get some of the fundamentals with respect to the limestone. So the term limestone is usually applied to a calcareous sedimentary rock consisting essentially of the carbonates. What do we mean by it? It is nothing but a sedimentary rock. It is basically composed of calcium carbonate, which is calcite, and it has high content of impurities like silica, dolomite, clay, so on and so forth in various proportions. That is what is called as the limestone. So the limestone happens to be a non-metallic mineral. The two most important constituents are calcite and dolomite. Limestone often contains magnesium carbonate either as dolomite or magnesite mixed with calcite. When it comes to identifying whether the limestone is a major mineral or a minor mineral, we have to understand that it is both a major mineral as well as a minor mineral. Let's say if the limestone is used for the industrial purposes, that is when it will become a major mineral, or it is used for building purposes. In such a scenario, it will become a minor mineral as per the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act of 1957. So if it is used in the industries, it becomes the major mineral. If it is used in building purposes, it becomes a minor mineral. So what are the applications or uses of this particular limestone? The principal use of limestone is in the cement industry. So kindly remember, more than 75% of the limestone is used in the cement industry, and apart from the cement industry, it is used in glass, ceramic, paper, textile, tanning industry, for manufacturing of calcium carbide, alkali and bleaching powder, for water purification and sugar refining, in fertilizer, and as soil conditioning agent in the agriculture as well. These are some of the uses of limestone. Now the question from my side to you is that you have to put on the comment section which are the top 5 states that produce limestone in India. When you look into the picture, these are the areas where we have limestone, but you have to identify which are the top 5 states which produce limestone in India and put it on the comment section. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about Alps mountain. When we speak about Alps mountain, it is one of the highest and extensive mountain where in the continent of Europe. It is spread majorly across 8 countries. It is spread on more than 8 countries, but majorly where we see is in France, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, Slovenia, as well as Italy. It is also present in Monaco as well as Germany and in other countries as well. But majorly it is seen in all these countries. When a part of Alps which is present in the France is what is called as the French Alps. Apart from this, we have what is called as the foehn winds. What are these foehn winds? These are nothing but the warm dry winds. Where do we see? We see on the leeward side of the Alps mountain. So what exactly happens when you look into the windward side? What you actually witness is rainfall in this particular region of the Alps mountain, but on the leeward side what we actually witness is the warm dry winds, and that warm dry winds is what is called as the foehn winds. So kindly remember, these foehn winds are warm dry winds. Where do we actually see them? We see them in the Alps mountain on the leeward side. These are some of the important factors when it comes to the preliminary examination. Now let's look into the next article. This article says anti-COVID-19 drug developed by DRDO gets emergency use nod. What is the context? We have the Drug Controller General of India, which has granted permission for the emergency use of an anti-COVID therapeutic application drug, and this drug is going by the name 2-deoxy-D-glucose. This is developed by Institute of Nuclear Medicine and Allied Sciences, which is a lab of the Defense Research and Developmental Organization. This particular drug has been produced in collaboration with Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Hyderabad. How does this drug work? The drug comes in the powder form, in the form of sachets, and this has to be put in the water and has to be consumed by that individual. It accumulates in the virus infected cells and prevents their growth by stopping the viral synthesis and energy production of that virus. It selectively accumulates in virally infected cells, making the drug unique. So what is the significance of this particular drug? It will help in faster recovery of the COVID-19 patients who are hospitalized, and thus reducing the hospital stay of that COVID patient, and at the same time it will also ensure the COVID-19 patients do not need oxygen supplement during this particular process. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. Now let's look into the mains practice question. What is the role of CT scan in diagnosis of COVID-19? Discuss the potential risk associated with excessive use of scanning. Next practice question. Explain the recent Supreme Court ruling on 102nd Constitutional Amendment with respect to identifying socially and educationally backward classes. Will it deprive state governments of their power to identify SCBCs? Evaluate. So please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Please do give positive feedback to your friends' answers. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.